So I got asked by somebody from the iOS Meetup to do a talk about React Native because he'd been hearing a lot about it and was interested in hearing some more about it. Luckily, this isn't the Try Swift week, so hopefully you guys will be a little bit more friendly towards it. By all means, I'm not a React Native or JavaScript evangelist. I'm not that big on the platform because I'm not here to try to. But I do want you to realize just how beautiful a language React is because of how amazing it can be with all these equal signs. But actually, it's not a very beautiful language. Even myself as a designer and light front-end developer, I can see many of the parts that don't make sense completely about it. Definitely Swift, Objective-C are going to be a more beautiful language overall, but for prototyping an app, for getting some parts of the app, I think there is complete reason to develop in React Native, but maybe not 100% overall. There are some people in Facebook that say that they're trying to make React Native something that you would build your total app with, but there's other parts of within a company as big as Facebook that it looks like they're taking a direction of using it primarily for components. So I want to talk to you about that today. It's going to be a little bit jumbled because I took on this presentation while during our month when we released our React Native app, so things have been a little bit busy and haven't quite finished it. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the app that we made, which made sense for making the jump to React Native, because in the past when I worked with Lee, when I've worked with other people here, I was 100% in on Swift because it just didn't make sense to do something with React, because you'd hear people, you'd get your business friend or somebody come to you and be very excited about PhoneGap or Titanium, or whatever cross-platform app there was. But they'd tweet you, they'd come up to you, oh, all our problems are solved. We don't need that. We don't need that iOS guy, or we don't need to hire that Android guy because we've heard about this cross-platform app website. And but I was never too excited about them. I think most cross-platform apps are usually end up being pretty crappy. They're not overall. They don't perform well. Most people, even a non-developer, a non-tech savvy person, can tell the difference in what they're getting from them. But I want to jump in a little bit into the code side, and then we'll jump back out to the reasons behind it, because the first question that I always got from Matt, who's not here today, he should be right there, so we'll speak to him in honor, was, but what about Flex? How does Flex work? Because Flex is a big part about changing to React Native. Many of his concerns that he asked me about was that you can't make a specific enough layout with Flex. You don't have enough control over it. I actually do think that Flex is one of the strong points of working in React Native. I'm not too big a fan of working in storyboards. When I have in the past, sometimes things can get a little bit jumbled. It's hard to tell where your dependencies, what's relying on other parts. So just a few basics of Flex, and then maybe we can open up to questions about Flex and then get back into the presentation. So Flex is basically dependent on two axes. It's first you need to define if you want to flex in a row or in a column. The default is the row. So in this example taken from our app, we have this kind of tweet view, and then we just have to define that it's flexing in a vertical way. It's very simple. You set up your view, and then you just tell it flex as a column overall. And then within that, we just have another division that's a view. Sorry, I do some web development as well, so please forgive me if I say division. It's that also has a flex column. But then if you want to take it another way, you set it as a flex row. It's just going side by side. Pretty basic, pretty easy, nothing mind-blowing. But then one thing that I really do enjoy about the flex is that it's it really helps you to get your spacing right with the space between or space around. There's some basic assumptions that they make there about how you want things laid out. So here we're using space between that just groups things towards the beginning or groups things towards the end of your view and spaces them out a little bit. Then there's also the space around and the putting it at the beginning or the end. I know that sometimes in other apps we've had a little bit of trouble with this, but the one part that Matt was always concerned about is the flexing is basically fractions at its core, the percentages of the overall width. If you only have one view and you want it to take up the whole space, you do flex 1. But then if you have 2 views and you set them both at flex 1, then it's going to go 50-50. So flex basically whichever one's bigger, it's not like a 90%. I'm not sure why they chose to do it this way overall. Somebody with more insight could probably, with a more technical background, might be able to explain it to you. I'm not sure why they don't use percents, but you have to do your math a little bit yourself to decide how much space it's going to take. So difficult math, like what percent of 100 is 3 versus 2. So it's pretty technical stuff. Hopefully you guys can get somebody to help you out with it like I have been able to. So with this example, we had this button has a flex of 3, this one has a flex of 2, and then these two have 1. So that makes it take up, now that is difficult math though. What percent is 3 of 7? I don't know. Roughly 3 divided by 7, please, Lee. I think it's one of those infinite numbers. I don't know. let's say 40% about. So that tells it to take up about 40%. Lee's not happy with that answer. I'm not here to teach you math. David's here to teach you math. But the comments, that's 2, so then it's 2 out of 7. And then the author and share are 1 out of 7. So that's the part of flex. But flex is a little bit tough at times for some elements, and I want to get in. I'd want something a little bit more specific, not purely fraction based or percentage based. So then one thing that I did find that works well is using in React Native. There's a good framework called Dimensions that basically gives you the screen dimensions. I'm sure there's something like it in Swift as well, and then you can do some basic math off of dimensions and work in percentages like I usually like to do rather than fractions. Then you can base it off of the screen size and everything. One thing to be careful with dimensions is that when you're working with dimensions, some Android screens have a nav bar at the bottom, the built-in nav bar with the back button, the home button, and whatnot. And sometimes dimensions does take that account for that as part of the screen overall, when it's technically or literally part of the screen, but it's not part of the screen that you can actually work with. Maybe somebody that, I don't know, Ahmed uses Android a lot. I'm not sure about other people here that use Android, but yeah, some of the phones do have that as a literal part of the screen. Some of them have it as a button, like separate hardware from the screen, and that can mess up dimensions, so you do want to be careful with that. I can talk a little bit more about that later, or we can open it up for, does anybody have questions about Flex? I know I busted through that pretty fast. Nobody?
Is this the Flexbox? Like
Flexbox,
CSS,
yeah,
Flexbox?
same exact thing as Flexbox. So I was going to recommend to you all to, if you do have questions, want to see how it works a little bit more, CSS Tricks has a pretty great guide on the basics of Flexbox, how going on the flex direction. Then the Flex Wrap, I think the Flex Wrap is a pretty great part of Flex, how it lets the views go on to the next line. It works a lot better with text if you have multiple views based on text and you want them to be able to wrap around rather than just push off the screen. I'm not sure. And Yeah, the justify content works really nice as well. But if you come here, you can get a lot more information about this. The presentation looks a little weird right now because was making it on Medium's new series kind of thing, so that all of you could check out some of these links later. When it gets done, I'll post it up on the iOS group so that you can get the links from it. Yeah, the Flex is working well, but the dimensions can save you when you need to do something really specific with it. With this element, we needed to. So this is kind of telling the story of why we made the switch. I didn't use something cross-platform in the past, because we were doing some technical things with iBeacons, Bluetooth frameworks, and whatnot. And at that time, 4 years ago, all of the Cordova or PhoneGap, whatnot, were all in. You had to go all in. So if we decided to use that, there's no way that we would have been able to do what we were at 1010 with iBeacons and doing that with something like PhoneGap. Then in one of our recent apps, we were working on text editor and a content creation app that just with PhoneGap again wouldn't work out that well. So that's why we said no to it in the past. But with our most recent app, we made the move to starting to use React Native because it's a little bit safer than those other platforms that those other Titanium and whatnot in the past, where you had to go all in and you'd read horror stories about somebody building 99% of their app and then realizing there was something that they needed that they simply wasn't offered inside of Titanium, and they couldn't use it. So, but luckily with React Native, you can bridge the gap between Swift. Some people, I've been to some presentations where it's been framed as a little bit of a negative that React Native can't do everything yet, but I think that's the benefit of React Native, is that it can't do everything and it realizes it can't do everything. So it makes sure that the bridges are there so that you can get into what you need to natively whenever if you find some great library that you want to use that works only in Swift, then, or as a Swift, some open source project, you can easily bridge the gap and use that within a React Native project. It's all set up really easily to do. And so that's one of the big reasons why we made the decision to go with React Native on our most recent project. And then also because we were working on a content consumption app. It's not something crazy. I don't know if I try to make Derek's drum app in React Native, it might be a little bit ambitious to try to do. I think something like that, something really intricate, you probably want to do in Swift, truly native app. But if you're doing something consumption based, Airbnb gets away with using React Native a lot. They've made the Airbnb app is almost completely in React Native. Facebook uses it for their F8 app completely. There's a few other apps, some really big apps out there, like I believe Audible is using it completely. So if you're doing content consumption, nothing creation based, I recommend giving it a go, trying it out. And there's React. Facebook lists out really easily how to use it. But a few mistakes that we made with React Native, besides taking this, agreeing to do a presentation during release month, is that you need a really great navigator when you start out. If you don't have a good navigator, that's when things get really choppy. And even Facebook's core navigator that they offer through React Native is not truly native. You can use inside of React, Facebook makes these different components available, and some of them are Navigator iOS, and then there's Navigator also. Navigator iOS is a component that points directly to the true navigator that you would use if you were building your app with Swift. It's completely native. But then there's Navigator, and if you're a little bit lazy and you're trying to get things going really fast, you'd probably make the mistake like we did of using just the general navigator. It's a little bit it's a little bit closer to what something in PhoneGap or Titanium are using. It's not truly pointing to a component. But luckily, there's some great navigators coming out now that are truly cross-platform. You could use the Navigator iOS, but sorry, let me go back a little bit. The Navigator iOS is truly native, but the reason why you wouldn't want to use it is then when you have your Android app, you're going to have a separate file or a separate chunk of code that points to the Android Navigator as well. So that's then it defeats a little bit of the purpose.
What do you mean by Navigator?
The general app Navigator that
just moving through, like pushing
views,
views and view controllers?
Exactly.
Okay.
So sorry, apology.
I just wasn't sure if there was something like specific that you were referring to.
Yeah, a lot of the navigators like on React will come with some component as well, like a tab bar as well that they encourage you to use or something like that. So the general Facebook one is just open, but for pushing or popping views, basically.
Okay.
So it's but yeah, in our first go, we tried to avoid any of those React Native components that had iOS on the end, because then it's taking away some of the perceived benefit of being able to write code once and use it for both platforms. But I would make sure that the component, if it does, that it's a truly native component, that it's not something that's a nice HTML element that looks like a true component. Like switches, for example, at first I believe were iOS only, and then they had a fake one for Android. But then as they're iterating and they're releasing, you're seeing a lot of these components become truly native really fast. But then there's a lot of great open source navigators out there, a lot of great open source projects out there. Airbnb made their own navigator that you can use that's truly native across both platforms, and then that means that you're getting the 60 frames per second, the animation that is truly that makes it hard to notice that this is not true Swift app. And that's I'd say the navigator is the obviously one of the core parts that the user is going to realize when it's not scrolling as fast, and they're just going to feel it. So I'd recommend getting a good navigator to start out. You need to make sure that you know your platform as well. I'm purely an iOS person for many years. I've done a few of those things where, I'm going to get to know Android and use it for 2 days or something, take my SIM card out and put it in Android and then go back to iOS. But we made an in-app browser for an Android app. There was absolutely no point. Like in iOS, if the app does not have an in-app browser, if it pops out and goes to Safari, it feels like a really bad interaction, personally, to me. When, if Twitter didn't have its own browser and it pops you out to Safari, you're like, why didn't they take the time to make this? Or they didn't even have to make it, because there's you have the component or you have the framework there to be able to use a Safari view with the back buttons, the share buttons, and everything. When we were doing this, I was just shocked that Android did not have that. Like, how does it not have this in-app browser, a web view, easy to use web view with share buttons and back buttons and everything? And then I went online and I searched for, something open source that we could use, and there's nothing out there. And I was just like, now that is why people use iOS, because they make their, they have everything available, and felt a little bit judgmental. And then we took the time to make it, and then realized, oh wait, on Android, actually you want the proper experiences to leave the app for their Chrome browser or whatever browser they've set as their default. So I would recommend, before designing the app, a good friend always emphasizes this, but really get to know the Android platform, or you could waste a lot of time putting things in. The back button is the most well-cited point on Android that you don't want to have on there. So, but there's things like that you could waste a lot of time on. And then, the animations overall in some points have been tough on Android as well. But oh, too bad. My GIF's not showing for some reason. I'd say with the great power of React Native comes great responsibility, because I'm not a developer overall, and I have caused some trouble at points within our app making megazords within our views that are just huge, and then had to go back through and really clean them up, because you want to be careful. I think it's good that React Native is going to open up your development process. How many of you work with designers in your team? Okay. And then typically designers these days can do CSS or HTML, I would say. Is that pretty agreed upon? Most of them can do some core level of it. But how many of those designers can build a view in Swift or in Storyboard, would you say? Or get even close to it? Yeah, about 0. So this is going to open up your process a little bit, so that when they need a view made, they can, or if they want to adjust something, nudge it around, they can do that using React Native. It's not too scary for them, because it does look like HTML, it does look like CSS. And so that's one big thing. I did a presentation here a while ago on paint code in the past, and one of the big points that we had about paint code was paint code is great. Are you all familiar with paint code? It lets you create buttons or create images, truly vector images with variables and whatnot to put into an app that generates Swift as well. It's a it looks like Sketch, but then you can hook up and variables and export it as Objective-C or Swift, or now they have Java as well for Android. But the problem with it is that you can't create a view. You can't create multiple buttons and then decide how it's laid out. You have to create one component, one button, send it to commit it, and then ask your developer, okay, I want this here. Ask the person that's doing development in your team, I want to put this here, and then when you decide you want to nudge it a little bit, you've got to go back and talk to them again if you don't know how to work with a storyboard. But with React Native, you can create the total view, and then you can work with the development team to hook up the buttons on there. It's if you do have some HTML or CSS background, but still in the end we did ship, even if we didn't finish our presentation completely. So apologies about that, but I thought that we could maybe open it up and have some questions, and I could show you a little bit about our app and why it was an app that could work for React Native, whereas maybe some of the past apps that I've worked on wouldn't have been a good idea, like a photo taking app or whatnot. So yeah, the app that we ended up building is a storytelling app that it worked for React Native because, like I said, it's completely a consumption-based app. It's a stories app that fictional stories told through social media accounts, so that you can follow them just like your friends. It's stories for moments, because it's movies and books are great, but they're hard to fit into our life schedule when we're out, when we're going to meetups even on Saturdays, and even especially during the week. So it's stories told in short bites, just like what you see on Twitter and Facebook now. And then they do fit your rhythm, because since it's not like a book that a book couldn't fit in a tweet, then you couldn't put it on social. So it really does fit the rhythm, and then it can be experienced with friends. And the most important part is that they're told in real time. So it's not like just taking what's your favorite book, Derek?
My favorite book? Oh gosh. I don't do much reading, to be honest.
Anybody? It's not like taking Game of Thrones and just slicing it up into single tweets and then publishing those out. That would be butchering the book, literally. We're taking stories and telling them in real time. So it's like Lee sitting here, his tweet right now would be like, what the hell is this presentation? So it's real time, and then maybe in 2 hours or 20 minutes later, it'd be like, thank God that presentation is over. So then, so it's stories told in real time by the characters themselves, multilinear stories as well, because there's multiple characters, whereas in the book, like Game of Thrones, you go from one character in one chapter to the next character. In this, you're going all at the same time, all the characters together. And so it's a basic consumption app. You have basically a Twitter feed. All of these direct back to tweets. You could see that the navigator that we used isn't so good right now, because you can see that little jump right there. That's one thing that we need to switch out. But so they're all pointing back to tweets on the web that then readers can interact with as well, and follow where they already are. The scroll view is pointing to a truly native element, so that's why it's doesn't have those jumps like the navigator does. So the vision that we're trying to build overall is, if you've heard of, how many of here know about War of the Worlds? It was a radio show, like back in the 40s or 50s, where they told a story through the radio like it was a news story, and it really blurred that line between reality and fiction. And that's kind of what we're envisioning doing without creating the mass hysteria. So blending that line between reality and fiction, where you're on Twitter and maybe you see a story happening, and right now all content has been adapted to social media except for fiction. Politics, sports, news have all been adapted to it, but fiction, you don't really see fiction being broadcast through social media too much. So this is a small example, so that I could show you a story in the app, but the stories stretch out over weeks, over months, because they're being told in real time. This is a small example of what a story might look like unfolding from a user's point of view. So it's a War of the Worlds example of like a girl waking up and she sees somebody retweeted a photo of a UFO over Tokyo, and she doesn't really know if it's real or not, and then her friend definitely doesn't believe it. And you can go throughout your day, and then when you come back, the next chapter's been released, just like if you're following your friend throughout the day and they're doing something exciting that day. And when a new character comes in, you can see their background as well, because they don't just exist on the page when they join the story, like in a traditional book. When they join the story, they've existed before then, because they have their own accounts as well. All throughout the day, you come back, and then it's really easy for the story to spread, because these are all tweets or Instagrams, so they can easily be shared, commented on, and then somebody else can easily discover it and go back through the story and see what's happened, because it's all happening on Twitter at first. It's a distribution network that we're building primarily, and it matches the rhythms of today, because it's okay to take out your phone and look at it for a second, whereas if you pull out a book right now or in the office, maybe that's not quite as acceptable. So we're trying to get fiction and imagination back into people's lives during the daytime, so that they can, I think a lot of fiction that can inspire what we're trying to do in real life as well. So that's what we've built with React Native, and since it is a consumption app, it does make sense now. We're probably going to move more towards just strictly doing the UI components in React Native, and then keeping the back end of the app separate within Swift and Android. That's how how many of the big teams go about it right now. So, but we've had fun with it. There's definitely been trying times making the transition to React Native, but I would recommend giving it a go. It's really easy to set up a project with now. It was tough at first for people like me that were used to building an app in Xcode and then submitting it. Android is a little bit more difficult with the signing when you submit to the App Store than iOS, at least for me. It was, but at this last they just had a React Native conference, the official one, like 2 weeks ago, and they've made it really easy. So I recommend giving it a go, and you can even they made some really cool things where you can even build it kind of like the Xcode playgrounds. They've made something like that you can use online as well. So apologies for the presentation that jumped all over the place a little bit. If the other two guys hadn't pulled out, I would have pulled out as well, but didn't want to leave Derek here by himself.
Running 2 presentations in 2 days, yeah, no, not a good idea.
Yeah. So, does anybody have any questions about React Native overall, or yes?
Yeah, I'm just curious about how you manage if you're using like React Native and sort of Swift or Objective-C native stuff. How do you manage the code base and what kind of issues are there?
So I can show you how the structure looks a little bit. Let's see. Sorry, this. Why is that? The screen is a little weird. So it's all within one. The React Native project is all within one directory. It's so we have our iOS. Here you have the iOS and the Android directories. That if you did have something that points directly to, the Bluetooth framework that you need to use, or calendar, that you need to use, then you would do it directly within the traditional Xcode project or workspace. Then, and you have the same for Android. Those are both the separate points where it would kind of branch off, and those are both hooked up to everything in there is pointing really well to the source of your project. That this is the cross-platform points in here. You see you have this index Android and index iOS, these two files. Sorry, I would show it to you in Atom, but I'm not sure why it's not opening up well on the screen resolution right now. But inside of here is where you have everything that's cross-platform. So you do need to change your app delegate from time to time to point to a new library, like we use OAuth in ours, but everything's being tracked within this one single directory. I'm not completely sure how it knows what's going on in the source file. I'm the wrong person to ask about that. I believe it's Magic is the framework they're using. So but yeah, because when I do open the Xcode project, I am just opening this iOS file. But it's that is one point that I didn't mention. But if you've talked to anybody about React Native in the past, I didn't think it would. I don't want to waste your time, but maybe if you haven't heard about it, is the live rebuilding. They have a hot reloading. So when you make a change within this project, within anything in here to style or a view overall, it does reload your project immediately, which is really nice for that UI side. That's one good reason to use it for the UI, at least, is because it's just so much faster. And they have live reloading, and then they have hot reloading. And hot reloading is pretty great, because if you're five views deep, or however many deep, it reloads right in that view. So it's good. Sorry, I went off on a tangent from your question, but did I answer your basic? Cool. Ahmed's the real master on this, so he's gonna ask me a question I don't know.
I think I did a lot of like Cordova PhoneGap stuff, but never React.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have migration issues like when they released a new version?
They're pretty good about the upgrading on React. Right now we're on 39.2 and they just got to 42. I need to take a little bit of time to upgrade from that, but I've been hearing, I know one alternative to React is Angular, and I heard that the switch from Angular 1 to Angular 2 has been an insane change. Like, it's almost two separate.
They're completely separate.
Yeah, so it's not.
Separate universes.
Yeah, so it's nothing like that, and it's not as big as the like going from Swift 1 to 2 to 3. Like it's pretty simple there because they are releasing them probably about every month or two is a new version, and I think that's probably because I think it's I may be wrong about the versioning, but I think it's 0.39.2, so they are taking it very incrementally. So as long as we got a little bit behind on going from 39 to 40 to 41, 42, so this one is a little bit tougher migration, but if we had been going, with each one keeping up, but it had been really easy in the past, so.
You upgrade and just like replace a folder, or do you have like a script?
Yeah, it's just I think you just pull from the repository, or you're using npm, so you just do npm React Native update. So yeah, and it one nice thing about React Native is Facebook has gone pretty does support it really well. So if you do want to, they do have a Xcode like add-on for Atom called Nuclide, where you can build from there. It's doing the code analysis within there, so you're not just working. Does bear some similarities to working in Xcode, whereas spotting your errors before building as well. So yes. Mm-hmm. So they have a red screen of death in React Native. It's which gives you some good information on there about what's going wrong typically, and if it's if it's an issue going with React Native to Android, the components that you're using are usually pretty specific right from the start of this does work on only iOS, and you're going to need to make something else for Android or not. So we haven't run into any issues with like this isn't working just because it's Android, where it's been a complete failure. But then there is you can debug also using the Chrome JavaScript console. So sorry, I'm not complete. That was a crappy answer. So I'm not completely sure about it. Pretty smooth. The Android has had some issues with like scrolling, has had some issues now luckily in React 42 there's scroll to the end of the view. That's been a lot easier. There are some small things that on Android that have been a little bit of trouble for us, but we're a primarily iOS team right now, so it's there's been a few gaps, but that I'm sure if we were more focused, our past experience on Android, it would have been the same as bridging the gap with iOS. So yeah, there's a lot of projects out there that you can use. Then Facebook's their official website for it, and their official support forums for it are a lot more interactive. I love Apple, but you go into the developer forums and it's lots of times. Sometimes you'll get an answer right away, but I don't think you too often get an answer from somebody that's actually working on the project. That's actually Latner's not getting in there and talking to you. He's doing something else, probably more important than helping us. But yeah, you are getting direct support from the team a lot, and the community around it is there's there's plenty of open source projects out there for it. Luckily there's plenty of Stack Overflow questions out there for it. So it's really out there. I don't know about some of the other cross platforms. I think it does have probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest, support community out there. So, because there's not some. I know definitely some of the other cross platforms. I poked fun at it with the URL and said crap.com, but they aren't actually they can be used for really legitimate purposes, but there is definitely that stigma around them that so there I don't think that community's developed around them quite as well. But React Native, there's a really great community out there supporting it. Any other questions? Have we started the count to 30?
No, you're good. I have a question for you, just out of curiosity. Are you still using paint code?
Paint code did release an update that does work with React Native as well. Paint code 2 had Android and Swift, and now 3 does have it. That's my long way of, despite loving paint code, we haven't fit it into our workflow yet. Like my last presentation on paint code, like the whole focus of that was on paint code isn't as easy to pick up and plug into your workflow as it might seem. So we do need to take a little bit of time to get it back into our workflow, but it is something that I do want to do. I think it would be the perfect combination to be able to get designers involved in the development process, which is a self-serving goal of mine. So
it's an efficiency, like team efficiency. Right?
Yeah. But they have stayed up to date. I haven't gotten a chance to dig into it because right when we made the switch to React Native, then they released that version. So it was like first figuring out how we were going to get React Native into our development flow and figuring out some of the intricacies of it and trying to do Android. But paint code is something that I want to get back to as well. Has anybody here used React Native themselves? Nice. Yeah, we've enjoyed it a lot. There are the list view. There are some parts that we thought we're definitely gonna go back and rework, but for getting the first version out there, I started off, it completely is not a better, like, if we had $1 million billion budget, because million's not cool, but so then we probably would do separate truly native projects. But I think we would still do the front end in React as well. But right now, when we talked to a friend at Facebook in the beginning, he was telling us that there's not many apps out there that are trying to do it 100% or 99% in React, and we tried to give that a go on the first pass to see how it would work out. There are some parts like the list view in our app. If you see in Airbnb's app and you go into their messenger, messengers always start at the bottom of the list view rather than at the top. Twitter or Facebook, you start at the top and then you scroll down. On React Native, it's tough to get it to open at the bottom of the view, and then pull up to scroll back up through a messenger list. So if you go into Airbnb's, maybe they fixed it since last time, but what most of the React Native people are doing to fix that problem is the list view is a pretty core feature and part of our app, so we didn't want to do it completely native yet, but we invert the list view and then we invert each row inside of that so that it gets back, and then we can open it at the top, but it's actually the bottom visually. And then if you tap on the top status bar, if you don't disable that, instead of tapping on the status bar scrolls you to the top. With ours and with Airbnb's and anybody else that's doing it in React Native, it scrolls you to the bottom. It's a little bit strange. So there are some things like that definitely that aren't optimal, that you would want to go truly native on some parts. Anybody else? Cool. Thank you.